Yeah, okay, time to live free. Plenty goals I'm achieving. Some real life topics and talking financial freedom. Mindset, soul and love, everything in between. This is Freedom Podcast. Tune in, live free. Hey, got my mindset right and I got the drive. Planning one day, no more job, no more 9 to 5. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. This is freedom. Tune in, cause it's going down. Woo!
Hi, this is Anna and welcome to another episode of your Freedom Podcast. In this episode, I interview Jane Richards. Jane, along with her sister Claire Davies, is the owner and the operator of a vineyard and wine business located in South Australia. The vineyard has been supplying premium grapes to some of Australia's most iconic wine labels since 1995. Starting in 2005, Jane and Claire began keeping a careful selection of the highest quality of the fruit for themselves, turn it into wine for their family to enjoy, and then 8 at the Gate, named after the morning ritual and assembly of their 8 children at the gate in time for the school bus. They created their own wine label. With 3 generations of family involved, these women are producing wines that are winning hearts, palates and awards around the world. Jane has got a really inspiring story. You're going to love this episode and I'm so grateful she came on the show. Hi Jane, great to have you on the show.
Hey Anna, nice to see you in person.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great to see those barrels in the background as well. Gives people a bit of a clue, although some people might be listening to this on iTunes on audio. But great to have you on the show. I know we recently connected through the new Clubhouse app. I've made loads of really cool connections through there. So great to have you on the show to sort of share your story with our listeners. So the Freedom Podcast, I set this up really to share different people's stories, because I think by sharing our stories it inspires people, but it also can get us through good and bad times, you know. And we have 3 pillars: freedom in love, which is around self-care. It's not really romantic relationships. Freedom in love, so love that we give out to the world and love within ourselves. Freedom in money, which is financial freedom, and freedom in mind. Because I think those 3 pillars have kind of given me equilibrium, really. So there may be things that we touch along the way that kind of come under those 3 pillars, but it's great to have you on the show. And I'm really curious about this wine business that you have, because I know that you were saying it's been 20 years that you've had your vineyard farm. So yeah, it will have begun near the millennium, wouldn't it? That was when you...
Yes, exactly.
So how did all of that come about?
Well, the purchase of the vineyard happened, as I said, nearly 20 years ago. But I probably have to go back, I guess, a little bit further as to how I ended up sort of with 8 at the Gate, which is our wine label, and being a single mum to 4 kids who are amazing, but also a handful. And so I worked in the software and technology industry in Australia for many years. And back in the late 1990s, my then boyfriend, I guess you would call him, and I moved to the US, and we started working for the same very large software company that was based in New York, Long Island, New York.
I was wondering how you managed to get to the US. So it's either a guy, or it's either a man, or it's money.
Well, actually, the CEO of the company... Yeah, and the CEO of the company was quite clever, because he didn't really want me. He wanted my partner, because he was on a fast track to... Basically, he was being groomed to be the next CEO. And but we'd been in a relationship that was fairly serious for a while, and he knew that if he wanted him, he's going to have to offer me a job as well. So that's how I ended up over there. But I worked for a different arm of the business than him. It was a very large company, so there was plenty of space for both of us. Yeah. But so I worked there for a number of years, and then decided to have a child, and we got married and all that sort of thing. And so I had my first child in the US, and the way their immigration system worked is once I had a child, I had to go back to work after 6 weeks. And honestly, I remember the exact time that I decided that I couldn't go back to work and it was shopping in the supermarket. She was 5 weeks old and she smiled at me from the trolley. So I rang Stephen immediately and said, right, I cannot go back to work. I can't let anyone else have all these firsts. And he was very supportive. He didn't want me to, he was quite happy to have me staying at home, and we were financially very comfortable. In fact, it was ridiculous that it was such a hedonistic lifestyle that we led. It was crazy. We were living in a $5 million house on Long Island. I had a full-time nanny, full-time housekeeper, gardeners everywhere. And so it was really easy to continue having children, because when you've got that much help, it's, the tough stuff is not quite as tough. So anyway, so we progressed through that. But when I stopped working, I tried doing things. I did painting and I grew a rose garden and a veggie garden, but I came from the country, so my roots were still deep in the soil, and I really wanted to do something that involved my family, because I come from a large family in South Australia. So we grew up in the country. There's 5 of us kids, and mum and dad are still very much in, dad's been a farmer forever, and he'd moved to the city by this stage. So I bought the vineyard for myself, my sister, Claire, and my dad to sort of have as a family project. So initially it was purchased with, it was pretty easy to get the loan because we had quite a decent amount of expendable income. And so the family sort of worked that, and I would come back and visit sort of twice a year for a couple, 6-8 weeks each time. And so the kids have been on that piece of land since they were little, but then things changed quite a lot.
So tell us about that. I know you went through quite a challenging time.
Yes.
What was that after you got the vineyard then? It was after.
Yes. We bought the vineyard in early 2000, and fairly soon after that, actually, the company that we were working for, it was just after Enron, which was a really big litigation case in the US that was a fraud case. And the SEC, which is the US equivalent of, I don't know what you call it in the UK, but in Australia it's ASIC. So they're the guys who sort of keep an eye on what corporates are doing.
I can't think what we're called in the UK.
Anyway, they started an investigation because there was $1 billion bonus, like literally $1 billion was paid out to 3 employees at the top level. My husband was not one of those employees, but it was right at the .com boom. And so all the stock prices were going crazy, and literally they'd hit their stock target that was meant to be set for, a 7-year salary plan was met in like 18 months. So, but then that was so they got paid the bonus. But very soon after that came the .com crash, and that saw the stock price halve. And so it was that alerted the SEC to something. And anyway, they investigated the company for 2 years. They didn't find what they were looking for, which was like real sort of fraud stuff. But what they did find was software contracts recorded in the wrong month. So a contract signed on April the 3rd was recorded in March's figures, and that is not okay. So anyway, it's a long, boring story about a lot of legal stuff, but at the end of the day, we were very naive about how the US justice system worked. We really felt if you just tell the truth, you're fine. But it stopped at Stephen's level, which is my husband. He was sort of the second down from the CEO level, or what you call the C level. And they wanted top heads, and the chairman of the board and the board of directors, they were never going to let it get to them. These were extremely powerful people. They were senators, heads of business, like really big names. And so they made sure that it didn't get to them. And my husband was collateral damage, I guess. So at the end of the day, he got sentenced to 7 years in a federal prison, and he didn't get the nice white collar club fed. He got the double 20-foot razor wire fence prison on the west coast of the US, which was mostly gangs, because it had a very high, it was an immigration prison. So people that served their time there, after they'd served their time, they'd be deported. So there wasn't a lot of money spent on.
How long have you been in the US at this point?
So by the time he actually went to prison, I'd been in the US 8 years. So I came back to Australia.
When you're in a different country, I mean, actually, I've never lived in a different country, but I'm kind of imagine it always doesn't feel like home. You know, it becomes more familiar, but you know what I mean? That's how I'm imagining it, because I'm not actually thinking about. I'm not actually lived in. I was just like about to say how it would feel, but I'm like, actually, I've not actually lived in one.
No, for us, it was always part of our plan. We had always intended to bring the children back to Australia for their sort of senior education, because we wanted them to have a connection with Australia as well as the US, but they were all born in America. So we were really comfortable there. We had what we thought were really good friends. And that is one thing I'll tell you, when you go
to a federal prison in a country that isn't really your, you know what I mean? It's not your... you would have felt comfortable, but it still would have been a massive shock for that. You know, like you say, I think the laws are very different. I think the Australians and the Brits quite similar, and I think there's well, we've got that connection anyway, haven't we, from history? But I think there are things. I remember when I went to California, there was all these strange rules and different, you know, like it just felt strange as regards to the law. So I can imagine that actually it's easier. You know, people listen to this like, oh my God, he must have been involved in something absolutely horrendous. But it sounds like he was framed really for.
No, it's quite funny because well, it's not funny, but it is funny, I guess. In some countries, it's not even, you know, it's not actually illegal. It's just, but under the general accounting, what is it? It's the GAAP of accounting or something. There's you must record the revenue in the month. And we were literally talking about 3 days difference. They referred to it as the 35-day month, sort of as a joke, because whatever you took, it all works out the same in the wash, because when you rob from Peter to pay Paul, like within a month, it happens every month. This was not a practice that had just started. It had been going on for decades. So, but it's, and the way the US do their fraud numbers is they literally take the dollar value of the fraud and go across like a spreadsheet, you know, go across a column and down a row, and there's your sentencing guidelines, it's called. And his sentencing guidelines for the dollar value that they were talking was life in prison. So I guess we, at that point, you know, we didn't.
It must have been in complete shock though. I mean,
it was.
You wouldn't have known it was coming, but at the same time,
no,
when they started investigating and you could see that it was going to fall on his head, you must.
No, we did not ever.
Okay.
No, he was very loyal to the CEO, and there was a lot of people that were in the same position as him, and they made different decisions. They pled the fifth, so they didn't say anything for fear of incriminating themselves, which they are allowed to do, and we could have done that. But that would have meant throwing the CEO under the bus, and we didn't feel comfortable doing that. They were good people, we thought, and they were friends of ours as well. So, you know, at some point you've got to make a decision that allows you to sleep at night. So that was the only decision that we could make.
Exactly. So how did that leave you then? What happened?
Yeah. So I remember coming back, and you've got to remember my lifestyle in the US was crazy. Like, you know, we had Ferraris in the driveway. We had a 58-foot Italian yacht in Huntington Harbour. We flew in private planes. It was like, seriously, it's embarrassing now looking back on it, honestly.
It was an experience to go through. You had some very nice lunch dates from what I heard.
Yes, I have had lunch with some interesting people, and I met some really interesting people and some, you know, really smart people, and some people that I still call my friends and I hold very dear. But through that process, when it all came out that I was coming back to Australia with no money, like the government took absolutely everything. I remember we had to put up bail for him. It was $5 million in bail, and we had to pay 250,000 of that in cash. And I expected to get the cash back. You know, when someone goes to prison, you usually get your bail money back.
Yeah.
The judge said, I'll keep 200,000 for restitution, they call it, and here's 50 to get your family back to Australia. So I packed up the house and we sold everything on the side of the road and came back to Australia with 4 kids under the age of 6. And I remember my daughter on the plane coming back, she literally sits there and says, "Mummy, when are they going to come and make up my bed?" Because she'd been used to flying in a private jet. So
Sorry.
that was a bit of a shock. But anyway, it's turned out that, to be honest, it's turned out a blessing for that on that front, because if my kids had stayed in that lifestyle, they would be spoilt little brats, and they are not. They are very sensible, compassionate, caring, thoughtful humans that I'm very proud of.
Yeah. In fact, that fits into the whole freedom in money thing, because I think the reason I have that in my pillar is because when everything happened to me, I had a really successful job, and then I started working for myself. There was all this drama going on in my life, and it was a real struggle financially. And, I think if you're struggling financially, then that ups, it's like when people put quotes out on social media and say, money doesn't bring you happiness. It's usually because they haven't got any. I know that's like bad to say, but when you're struggling, you then come from this desperate state. And like you say, because I have friends from all different walks of life. That's why I love people. I love lots of different backgrounds and upbringings and different things like that. It's getting the balance right, isn't it? Because you can be from the total other scale where you are completely spoiled and you're not grounded. And I think it's quite hard actually to get that balance right, especially when you're bringing up children. Because I even think even though I've got a really good lifestyle, but nothing like the one you were explaining. But I still think, gosh, my children, they have this expectation, don't they? Sometimes you've got to school them and remind them and make them see the value in all these different things. So I can imagine that one of my friends lived in Singapore, and she had a helper, and when we only went there for 2 weeks. When we came back, my youngest was like, can't we get a Catherine to make waffles in the morning? I was like, no, we can't. We're back home now, So I can imagine living in, like you saying about your daughter on the plane. It's just natural, isn't it, that there's going to be that expectation. So it's good how you compare those two worlds in a way and see how your children would have become,
Yes, and I'd like to think I would have been able to keep them grounded, but I simply would not have been able to keep them grounded. The circles we were mixing in, the things we were doing, and it just, so, there's a silver lining to every rain cloud, I guess. And, when it all happened, I had my pity party for myself for a little while, and woe is me, what am I going to do? But at the end of the day, I had 4 little kids to look after. I had absolutely no choice but to pick myself up and find a way to support them, because the vineyard was doing it really tough. We'd had a few years of really bad things happen. We lost a crop totally due to weather and, frost, and it's just at the worst time that you could imagine, as well as that was in the mid 2000s. We call them noughties, like 2006, 2007. That's there was a glut of grapes in Australia, so we had an oversupply. So we were getting paid, a quarter of what we were getting paid when we first bought the vineyard. And so, and my sister was having children at this stage too. So she's having a family. So she's a trained viticulturalist. So she was doing all the viticulture side. And at the time we were just selling grapes to other people. So I'd, go and help drive a tractor, do as much as I could, but I had to get out and get another job as well. So I actually started teaching people how to trade options. So that's just... So a bit random, but
I think children do get you through bad times, don't they? Because they haven't got the experience of what you go through as an adult. They're just very direct and I can't think of the word now, but just manage to deal with things very well. They just get on with it kind of attitude. Although sometimes, like with my two, one has hidden a lot of emotions, and it still concerns me now That, whereas the other one is very open and will, like, you know, just throw something and outward with his emotions. But I think because you've got to have those routines, they kind of keep you. Whereas what I've often thought, if I didn't have the children, I might have wallowed and not even got up for the day, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And my youngest was 3 months old, like literally still breastfeeding. So I couldn't hit the bottle. I couldn't take drugs or any of those things. I had to look after myself as well, because he depended on me literally for food. And and they'd been, you know, I was obviously very concerned about how they were dealing with things mentally and emotionally, because everything they knew had been ripped out from under them. They were born in the US. They'd only ever lived in the US. They spoke with funny voices. You know, when they went to school, they got teased because of their US accent. And they also copped a bit because someone would say, you know, oh, have you been to Disneyland? Yeah, go to Disneyland 3 times a year, because that's what they did. But I didn't teach them, okay, you need to maybe tone it down a bit, because you're in a different, you know, we're not in Kansas anymore, sort of thing. So
it's a big change. But then they do say children get used to that fairly quickly, don't they?
Yeah, the thing they
adults sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess the thing they never got used to was their father not being there, because Stephen and I were together that whole time. I would visit as often as I could, but that cost a lot of money, and I always had to get people to look after the kids. And he ended up spending 4 years in prison. He got let out early. His appeal, the judge said, you know, the judge could never understand why Stephen was standing in front of him anyway. He was what you'd refer to as collateral damage. So the judge let him out on appeal, and so he came back after 4 years. But 4 years in a kid's life is a really long time, and they missed him terribly. And as I said, we stayed together that whole time. But when he came back, it was, you know, he'd gone through such a different experience to me. You know, I thought I had it tough raising 4 kids with no money and no partner, and he thought he had it tough, you know, losing everything and being in prison. So we're sort of like, ne'er the twain shall meet. After that, we agreed that, well, he moved to Queensland, and I've had 100% custody of the kids, but we have a good relationship. When he wants to see them, he comes down and I give him the keys to my car and my house.
How far is that away from you, sort of driving?
Oh, you can't drive it. It's a 3-hour flight.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. So it's a fair way.
Australia's so big, it's hard for
yes. Australia is a very big place.
I know. So it's good that you still got a decent relationship. I'm quite envious of that, you know, because
I
think for your children, it's not always about having that dad that's seeing them every day or every weekend, but it's actually just having that relationship, which I think, you know, I think it helps your children flourish, just knowing that your parents get on, really. As in civil, you don't have to be like best mates, and, you know, but just being able to get on civilly with your children and having that respect, and understanding for each other. Because I think, like you say, you both went through different experiences in those 4 years, didn't you? And it's understanding each other, which must have been really difficult.
Yeah, I think he found parenting 4 kids with no money pretty hard, because you have to do everything yourself. We always had people that did stuff for us, but but it was never a question for both of us. We always put the kids first in every decision we make, because this was our mess. It wasn't their mess. They, you know, we are the ones that created it, so we need to be the ones that have to be grown up enough to get along. And we have both stuck by that. And I think our kids are actually really proud of us now. They look at, you know, some of their friends who are in split marriages come into our house, and they don't, you know, they're like all a bit shocked that we're both there together and it's all fine. And then they're jealous. They want that for their parents. So I'm quite proud of how we've handled it.
Exactly, especially through kind of difficult circumstances, because it's not like every day that you go to prison, is it?
No, it's not.
It could have easily gone the other way, and I think that's real credit to you, because it's something that I really tried to do. It's one of my things of like, why can't I sort this out? You know what I mean? Because I tried every solution of trying to help him understand that us being friends could be really help our children, but it just didn't happen. So I think, kudos to you both, because it takes 2 of you to do that, I think.
Yeah, it does.
So all of that, obviously, I don't know if you think similar to me, that when you go through something kind of quite challenging or difficult, that actually you do learn a lot from it. And it, because I don't regret my challenges. I don't know if you feel like that, like it's
No,
made who you are, and like you were reflecting on your children's lifestyles and things like that.
Yeah, and I look now, and I guess I subconsciously made this decision a long time ago that there was a number of ways to look at it, but I chose to believe that, if something had happened to one of my children, I would literally be on my knees, praying to whoever is listening, that do anything to me, but don't hurt my child. And so I choose to believe this was my anything. So this was bad, but I've got 4 healthy kids. So I've got more than a lot of people do. And so I've always chosen to look at it that way, that it could be worse. And so, and my family's been fantastic. My parents have helped obviously along the way. And now, and my sister and I in business together, which, that can be challenging, but
that's a long time, I think. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah, but we make it work. And that's where the name comes from. So we started our wine label about 5-6 years ago when we needed to diversify because the vineyard needed to make more money. And so we started 8 at the Gate Wines, and the name 8 at the Gate came from the fact that my sister Claire has 4 children. I have 4 children. And so there was always 8 children hanging off a farm gate or a back of a ute or, somewhere. So when we started the label, we wanted it to be clear, people to understand that we were a real family running the business, not a corporate. And, we were the ones that are doing it. So it's definitely...
Obviously you did that 5 years ago and that's really changed the business. What was it that, you were saying that you've been in the wine industry now for 20 years.
Yep.
How did getting that label sort of change things for you then?
It made things a lot harder. No, so we were growing just grapes for other wine companies. So we would sell grapes to companies like Penfolds, which most people have heard of, Penfolds, Taylor's, Orlando. So they would buy our grapes. But when they didn't want to pay very much for the grapes, or they didn't need as much because their market conditions were not good, then we were price takers. And so, it's been a number of years of challenges where we can't control, we can grow the best grapes in the world, but if we just then selling them as grapes, we can't do any value adding. We can't make any more money. And the business needed to make more money. We had 8 children to support. So we started the wine label to diversify a bit and value add, because we could grow some really fantastic fruit. So why not put that? And we'd been making wine anyway for ourselves to drink and our friends. And we also made what's referred to as bulk wine, where, we'll sell it as litres to other people and they put it in their label. But creating a wine label, we definitely underestimated the amount of time it would take. Marketing is obviously a really ginormous aspect of that, because there's so many wine labels around the world and in Australia especially. So that now, it keeps me extremely busy, because I do everything, all the social media, all the, photographs, all the website. For some reason, because I came from
Is it available in the UK? Because us Brits love Australian wine.
I've been trying to get it in the UK. There's one particular importer distributor there who specialises in Australian wine, but he's not answering my emails, so I have to keep harassing him. But so if your listeners want 8 at the Gate, then they need to give him a hard time. But it's in the US now. We've just started exporting to the US, and obviously we didn't sort of plan to not be able to travel there, but we're just working out distribution over there at the moment.
So obviously the label has been out 5 years now. What is it you focusing on this year? Obviously getting it into new places, I suppose.
We're focusing on expanding our domestic market in Australia. I don't know how aware anybody is, but there's been some tariff changes with China putting a high tariff on Australia's.
I know that through my business with importing from China.
And so what that's meant is that because Australia exported a lot of wine to China, so there's a fairly big excess of wine in Australia at the moment. So the domestic market we continue to work on, but that's not going to soak up the excess, and we needed to build international markets for ourselves. And I mean, we're always flying the flag for brand Australia, because if, you know, rising tide floats all boats, and Australian wine globally is a market, you know, that's something that I certainly want to see grow globally, because the more Australian wine that is consumed around the world, the more grapes I sell and the more wine I sell.
Exactly. So I presume most of your business is sort of B2B rather than B2C, because I know there's more and more through the pandemic. I've seen more and more sort of wine companies doing this sort of direct consumer delivery box type thing, because everyone's been stuck at home.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything like that at your label.
Oh, there's heaps of different things like that, but we mostly do direct to consumer. There's a number of platforms that we do sell our wine on, like Vivino, which is a big platform, I think in the UK as well. Vivino is, and
I think I've seen that.
Yeah. So, but mostly online. So either from our website or from somebody else's website, and because our vineyard is 4 hours from a capital city, so we don't often do tastings at the vineyard because it's just such a long way. Plus with COVID, you know, things were, that's been tricky, but so
the online platforms really help you then over the last 12 months, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're just looking for a good distributor in the US at the moment, because it's such a crowded market there, and it's such a complicated market. They have what's called a 3-tiered structure, where there's a lot of people that sort of clip the ticket along the way, but at the end of the day, you have to, you know, help promote your wine and try to tell your story to the consumer. So we spend a lot of time doing videos and things like that. We tend to be pretty real with our videos. If you look on our Instagram page, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes wrong, because
I think everyone does, you know.
Yeah, well, I don't understand. In the wine industry, it's like we're not allowed to say what goes wrong, and maybe because I wasn't trained in the industry. My sister's the one that's trained. She's the one that's the viticulturalist, and I'm just on the business side. And I've learned to make wine, or not make wine, but, you know, do the blending and all that sort of thing. But it seems like there's a lot of stuff that people don't want to tell you, whereas I'm like, hey, to me this is the interesting stuff.
Exactly, like educating people. I think that's the whole thing in social media, isn't it? I think people love it when it's not perfect, because it's more real. And
but it's very rarely perfect for us.
We think as a business we want to show ourselves all like in a perfect way, but actually the fun stuff, the behind the scenes stuff, is the one that I think attracts people, really.
Yeah, and I think wine in general, there's a sort of an perception that it's everybody's sitting around with you know, fine clothes on, drinking in exotic locations, just not doing any work or anything. But it's not really. Wine can be consumed.
I bet your brand could create a really good TikTok.
My kids and I have been doing some TikToks. I do have a TikTok account, and but it's those ones, the kids do that. And
a few years ago I saw a lady on there, because I always thought it was like just kids and stuff, and then I was hearing more about TikTok, and I saw this lady that did a glass blowing just from the US, and she made all these different things, and she did funny ones and broke stuff and wasn't all perfect as well. And her channel just completely blew up, you know, because I've never seen anyone, because I'm from the physical products niche, I've never seen anyone with physical products, and she was the first. Obviously hers was very creative, so I definitely think we could probably do some really funny behind the scenes, or everyone hanging up the date, what they all look like now they're all grown up.
I know. Yeah, it's definitely changed. They've social media though, wow, it is a big, you know, it's a big commitment of time and energy, because you can't really outsource it. I mean, it's so obvious when you give it, you know, you can tell what's genuine and what's not.
I have a thing now where someone helps me. So I do a lot of the stuff myself, you know, like stories and things like that on Instagram. And then if I'm struggling with things like, I've started doing funny reels, I send, you know, can you edit this? Can you sort this out for me, sort of thing?
I've asked people how to do things, but mostly I watch YouTube videos and work out how to do it myself, because I haven't actually sent it to anyone to do, except we did get we got some more professional looking videos done by a young guy who's the same age as my son, and he's building his videography business. So he came and spent some time getting some better footage.
Yeah,
so
that's nice. Yeah.
that's on our YouTube channel.
A lot of the stuff that I've done, I've learned myself, because I think it's better when you're doing social stuff and it comes from you. But there's been like things of direction of like, things are always changing. So I've been doing a lot of stuff. I know. I had a girl actually I met in Clubhouse that helped me with that, and she'd be like, right, it's reels at the moment. Oh no, now we need to focus on stories. Now we need to, the algorithm's changing and all this kind of stuff. You got to keep up with it all, haven't you? So, you
do, which is why I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts.
Yeah, exactly.
So
brilliant. Well, it's been great interviewing you. Is there anything? Obviously, we will, for everyone that's listening, we will put all Jane's details of 8 at the gate and the label for anybody who wants to check out the wine. And if there's any distributors on here that would like
Vinorium, that's the one in the UK I want.
So anyone listening to this, do reach out, and we'll put, if you are on iTunes, you'll see everything in the show notes. If you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see in the comments. But we'll put all her social platforms and also website details on there. So if there's anything else you want to share about your business before we round up, I don't know if there's anything else. That's probably it.
No, just, it is on the back of our label, it says made with passion, resolve and a touch of chaos, and that's pretty accurate. But we do make good wine.
So one last question I always ask everybody, and I was thinking the other day, all of these answers, I'm thinking of actually putting them all on different quote sheets, because everyone's answer is different. But because it's the Freedom Podcast, what does freedom mean to you, Jane?
Oh, what does freedom mean to me? Well, I think I have, freedom, just being able to raise my kids in a safe environment. Honestly, a safe and secure environment, especially with what's happened over the last, 2 years. I feel very fortunate to be in Australia. We have, literally, while the rest of the world, you guys and the US and so many other countries, India now has done it so tough. We're sitting here in Australia in our quarantine bubble, and honestly, life is fairly much back to normal, and we have not had the death rate or anything. So knowing that my kids are safe is certainly an element of freedom. But I guess if I was able to take a week off from working and do absolutely nothing, I'd think that'd be pretty cool.
Exactly. No, great stuff. It's always, I just love asking that question, because everybody always has a slightly different answer.
And I think it's a mindset. You can choose to be where you are. You can choose to reach that goal right now if you look at it a certain way, because I'm certainly not done. I've got a long way before I consider myself, to be a success, I guess. I mean, success is the wrong word, but I've got a lot more I want to do. Yeah. And so I don't know whether, if you keep reaching for that extra rung, do you ever actually get, is it financial freedom?
Content, kind of thing, really. But I think as you grow older, there's a lot, for me anyway, I think it's like there's more experiences, there's a lot more traveling that I want to do. I've traveled to a lot of places, but there's so many places, aren't there? And experiences that I want. So
yeah, that's true. I'd love to get to the vineyards of Italy.
Yeah, nice. Well, that's not far from the UK. You need to come over and have these negotiations with this.
Yes. Well, they're not letting us out yet. We're still locked up. So
yeah, of course. Because I know one of my contacts in Sydney said she's in another lockdown, I think.
Yeah, we've had
We've just come out of ours. So we're all celebrating over here. Well, hoping we're not too celebrating that I end up going back in another one, but the summer months they let you out, and then the winter there's more you get locked back down. And I know you guys are moving into winter now, so
we are.
So great stuff. Thanks ever so much. It's great to connect with you. Let's stay in touch, and thanks.
My pleasure.
Thanks for sharing your inspiring story, because I think it shows what a single mum can do when actually could have just. I love the quote of fear forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. And you definitely did the latter there, I think. So really great to connect with you, and thanks for sharing your story with us all.
You're welcome, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Your Freedom Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and subscribe on my YouTube channel. And if you want to get more freedom in your life, then come and join Your Freedom Project Facebook group, which the link is below in the comments section. And I am giving you a copy of my visualization manifesting book. So manifest more freedom in your life and live the life of your dreams.
Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you had a blast. Here to elevate your life. It's the Freedom Podcast. Love, money, mind. Love, money, mind. Wanna see you all win. Wanna see you all shine. Just make sure that you subscribe. Bringing good vibes. Join the Facebook group. Now it's time to change your life. Hope you come back. Right now is the chance. This is an experience. It's the Freedom Podcast. Hey.